Our topic for pulmonology is respiratory failure. Our reference book is Harrison's, and the learning outcomes for this lecture are, so we will introduce you to respiratory critical care, we will define and classify respiratory failure, and discuss the care and monitoring of mechanically ventilated patient. So what is our approach to a patient with critical illness? The care of critically ill patients centers initially on the resuscitation of patients at the extremes of physiologic deterioration. So at the onset, mabilis, very fast ang resuscitation. The use of invasive interventions such as mechanical ventilation and renal replacement therapy is a commonplace in the intensive care unit. And intensivists must recognize when a patient's chances for recovery are remote or non-existent and must counsel and comfort dying patients and their significant others. Now, how do we assess the severity of the illness? So in the ICU, illnesses are frequently categorized by degree of severity. Okay, so we use scoring systems. So severity of illness scoring systems are important for defining populations of critically ill patients, but it cannot be used as a survival predictor in individual patients. And the most commonly used scoring system are the APACHE scoring. So that's acute physiology and chronic health evaluation. And the SAPS, or the Simplified Acute Physiology Score system. So furthermore, okay, so we discuss the APACHE 2 system. So it is most commonly used scoring system in North America. So it uses age of the patient, okay, the type of ICU admission, whether it be an elective surgery, non-surgical, or after emergency surgery, chronic health problems, and uses 12 physiologic variables. So the worst values for each in the first 24 hours after ICU admission are used to derive a score. The predicted hospital mortality rate is derived from a formula that takes into the account the APACHE 2 score, the need for emergency surgery, and a weighted disease-specific diagnostic category. Okay, so here is an image or a table of the APACHE 2 score. So as you can see, the 12 physiologic variables are, so you have the temperature, the mean blood pressure, the heart rate, respiratory rate, the pH, the level of oxygen, serum sodium, potassium, creatinine, as well as your hematocrit, and the WBC count. Okay, so as you can see, if the value is normal, then the grade is almost 0. Okay, so at the extremes, kung palala siya ng palala, okay, the higher ang score ng patient. So extremes, okay, extreme low, extreme high. We also use the Glasgow Coma score. So eye-opening, verbal, and motor activity of the patient. Age, so more than or equal to 75, okay, will have a score of 6. Okay, so kung mas bata, less than 45, almost wala siyang score. Okay, so more than or equal to 75, mataas ang score niya, probably because immunocompromised ang mga elderlies or marami siyang chronic conditions or comorbidities. So chronic health, so none, you will score kung wala, 0. So if patient is admitted after elective surgery, you will give a score of 2. And if the patient is admitted after an emergency surgery, okay, that's the highest, you give a score of 5. Okay, so the APACHE score is the sum of the acute physiology score. Okay, the worst values during the first 24 hours in the ICU should be used. Okay, GCS component as well. So we use that for computing the Apache score. So this image or graph shows you the survival curve. Okay, the blue is non-operative, the blue bar, whereas the green bar is post-operative. So it means that the higher the score, the Apache score is, the higher is the mortality rate. Another scoring system is the SAPS. It is used more frequently in Europe, and the score is not disease specific. So it incorporates 3 underlying disease variables: AIDS, metastatic cancer, and hematologic malignancy. Now, let's go to respiratory failure. It is one of the most common reasons for ICU admission. Okay, and more than 75% of patients require mechanical ventilation during their stay in the ICU. And it is categorized on the basis of pathophysiologic derangements in respiratory function. So how many types of respiratory failure do you know? Okay, let's see. We have type 1. So in type 1, there's acute hypoxemic respiratory failure. Okay, so ang derangement niya is hypoxemia. So this type of failure occurs with alveolar flooding, okay, and subsequent intrapulmonary shunt physiology. When you say alveolar flooding, it may be a consequence of pulmonary edema, okay, in cases of severe pneumonia or in cases of alveolar hemorrhage. So pulmonary edema categorized as occurring due to the elevated pulmonary microvascular pressure, such as in heart failure, and intravascular volume overload or acute respiratory distress syndrome. Okay, the one we commonly see in COVID-19 infection. Okay, so they develop acute respiratory distress syndrome that is secondary to COVID-19 pneumonia. So in clinical setting, when do we see type 1 respiratory failure? So patients who have sepsis, so those with gastric aspiration, pneumonia, okay, near drowning, multiple blood transfusion, and pancreatitis. But the classic example for type 1 would be pneumonia and ARDS. So ARDS, as a classic example of type 1 respiratory failure, is defined by acute onset, so meaning less than 1 week, of bilateral opacities on chest imaging that is not fully explained by cardiac failure or fluid overload, and of shunt physiology requiring positive end expiratory pressure. The mortality rate is high, so at 50 to 70%. Okay? So animal studies have suggested that stretching and overdistension of injured alveoli during mechanical ventilation can further injure the lung. So hence the ventilator-induced volutrauma. That's why one of the traditional ventilator strategies for ARDS, okay, is to give low tidal volume. So actually, it's a battle between giving large tidal volume versus low tidal volume. Okay, and then later on, we will discuss which is a grade A recommendation, okay, for in the management of ARDS. So fluid conservative management strategy is also one strategy for ARDS. Okay, this is to maintain a low central venous pressure or pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, okay, versus fluid liberal strategy. Another type of respiratory failure is type 2. Okay, so as a consequence of alveolar hypoventilation and results from the inability to eliminate carbon dioxide effectively. So this one is a hypercapnic. So kung kanina hypoxemic, oxygen ang deranged, this one is carbon dioxide. So there is increased level of carbon dioxide. Okay. So mechanisms, marami. So one would be impaired central venous system drive to breathe. So among cases are drug overdose, brainstem injury, sleep disordered breathing, such as your obstructive sleep apnea, and severe hypothyroidism. Next mechanism is when there's an impairment in the strength with failure of neuromuscular function in the respiratory system. So neuromuscular naman ang problem. Probably involved, no? So impaired neuromuscular transmission such as in cases of myasthenia gravis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And of course, kung merong muscle weakness, so respiratory muscle weakness, such as in cases of myopathy, electrolyte derangement, and fatigue. So classic example for electrolyte derangement, hypokalemia. Third mechanism for type 2 is increased loads on the respiratory system. So when a patient has bronchospasm. So ano bang mga cases ng bronchospasm ang alam natin? Okay, classic example would be asthma, di ba? So loads due to reduced lung compliance. So among cases with alveolar edema, atelectasis, intrinsic, positive and expiratory pressure. Okay. Loads due to reduced chest wall compliance. Okay, so in cases of pneumothorax, pleural effusion, and abdominal distension. Okay. And loads due to increased minute ventilation requirements. So pulmonary embolism and sepsis are example of this. So loads, reduced lung compliance, reduced chest wall compliance, and increased minute ventilation. These are part of the increased load on the respiratory system. So the mainstay of therapy for type 2 respiratory failure are directed at reversing the underlying cause of the ventilatory failure. So non-invasive positive pressure ventilation, just like in this image, okay, with a tight-fitting facial or nasal mask, okay, with avoidance of endotracheal intubation, often stabilizes these patients. So non-invasive positive pressure ventilation. So you provide a positive pressure. This is beneficial in treating patients with exacerbation of COPD. Next type would be type 3, respiratory failure. So this form of respi failure results from lung atelectasis. Okay, so because atelectasis occurs so commonly in the perioperative period, okay, so this is secondary to a perioperative respiratory failure. So remember, atelectasis is one of the most common surgical complication, post-operative surgical complication. So after general anesthesia, there is decrease in the functional residual capacity of the lung, leading to collapse of the depending lung units. Okay, hence causing atelectasis. So that's why you always instruct your post-op patients, no, to do frequent changes in position. Okay, to do chest physiotherapy. Okay, and of course, early ambulation. So upright positioning. So kung gising na si patient. And control of your incisional and abdominal pain. So non-invasive positive pressure ventilation may also be used to reverse regional atelectasis. Okay, so kung maliliit lang naman na parts yung affected. What about type 4? So this form results from hypoperfusion of respiratory muscles in patients in shock. So normally, okay, respiratory muscles consume less than 5% of the total cardiac output and oxygen delivery. But the patients in shock often experience respiratory distress due to pulmonary edema, lactic acidosis, and anemia. And that 40% of the cardiac output may be distributed to the respiratory muscles. Okay. Hence, okay, ano yung ginagawa natin? Okay, the intensivist will intubate the patient and put on mechanical ventilation, okay, to allow redistribution of the cardiac output away from the respiratory muscles and back to the vital organs while the shock is treated. Okay. Now we go to the last part of the lecture. How do we care as a whole, okay, in a mechanically ventilated patient? So whereas a thorough understanding of the pathophysiology of respi failure is essential for optimal patient care, recognition of a patient's readiness to be liberated from mechanical ventilation is likewise important. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, we can have screening tests for spontaneous breathing trial. Okay, so whenever we see that the oxygenation is stable, so you have a PF ratio of more than 200 and a PEEP of less than 5. Okay. If the patient has cough, okay, and airway reflexes, okay, there's no vasopressor agents or sedatives being administered to the patient, okay, then you can perform the screening test. The trial consists of a period of breathing through the endotracheal tube without ventilator support. Okay, so both CPAP of 5 centimeters water and an open TP's breathing system for 30 to 120 minutes. So trial of breathing. That's TP's. Failure of spontaneous breathing trial. So how do you say there's failure after a TP's weaning? So if during the spontaneous breathing trial, you notice that your patient has a respiratory rate of more than 35 per minute for more than 5 minutes, so nagkaroon ng tachypnea. If you notice that your patient has episodes of desaturation, so O2 saturation of less than 90%, an increased heart rate, so nagtachycardia, or a 20% increase or decrease from baseline. Okay. If there's an episode of hypotension, okay, a systolic blood pressure of less than 90 or more than 180. And when you notice that your patient has increased anxiety or diaphoretic, so you hook the patient to the ventilator. So he's not yet ready for extubation. So if at the end of the spontaneous breathing trial, none of the above events has occurred, and the ratio of the respiratory rate and tidal volume in liters is less than 105, the patient can be extubated. So mechanically ventilated patients frequently require sedatives and analgesics, especially sa beginning, okay, sa start. So opiates are the mainstay of therapy for pain control among mechanically ventilated patients. You can also give neuromuscular blocking agents. Okay, this is to facilitate mechanical ventilation in patients with profound ventilator dysynchrony despite optimal sedation. Okay, this is common among patients with severe ARDS. So use of these agents may result in prolonged weakness, myopathy, known as the post-paralytic syndrome. Okay, it can be used as a last resort when aggressive sedation fails to achieve patient ventilator synchrony. Next would be our monitoring parameters in the ICU. So evaluation of respiratory gas exchange is routine in critical illness. The gold standard remains ABG, or arterial blood gas analysis. So this assesses two main functions of the lung. So oxygenation and elimination of your carbon dioxide. It is generally safe but may be painful and cannot provide continuous monitoring. Hence, what is commonly used is pulse oximetry. It is most commonly used as non-invasive technique for monitoring respiratory function. Okay, so it takes advantage of differences in the absorptive properties of oxygenated and deoxygenated hemoglobin. So at wavelengths of 660 nanometers, oxyhemoglobin reflects light more effectively than does deoxyhemoglobin. Okay. Respiratory system mechanics. So what another parameters in the ICU? So the peak airway pressure is determined by two variables. So airway resistance, okay, and respiratory system compliance. So for respiratory system compliance, the two factors, the lungs and the chest wall. Okay, so normal respiratory system compliance is around 100 ml per centimeter water. Okay, in cases in cases of reduced chest wall compliance, okay, such as in pleural effusion, pneumothorax, increased abdominal girth, okay, so reduced chest wall. For reduced lung compliance, okay, of course, yung mga sakit na involve ang mismong lung, right? So such as in pneumonia, pulmonary edema, interstitial lung disease, or those conditions with auto-PEEP. Okay, so remember, okay, diseases that reduce the chest wall compliance and diseases that reduce the lung compliance. Okay. This may affect the peak airway pressure. So earlier, you are introduced repeatedly to auto-PEEP, or positive end expiratory pressure. What is this concept? So it occurs when there is insufficient time for emptying of alveoli before the next inspiratory cycle. So this means that the alveoli have not decompressed completely. Okay, and then the alveolar pressure remains positive, okay, at the end of exhalation. So this phenomenon results most commonly from critical narrowing of distal airways in disease processes such as asthma and COPD. Hence, auto-PEEP with resulting alveolar overdistension may result in diminished lung compliance. Okay, so how do we prevent complications of critical illness? Okay, so sepsis in the critical care unit. Okay, since sepsis is the leading cause of death in non-coronary ICUs, so how do we prevent? Okay, another form of infection in the ICU is nosocomial, no? So therapeutic interventions in the ICU are invasive and predispose patients to infectious complications. So hence nosocomial yung infection. So what are these intervention? So endotracheal intubation is one, indwelling vascular catheters, transurethral bladder catheters, so yung IFC, and other catheters placed into sterile body cavities. So anything na foreign, no? So IV line, peripheral IV line. So how do we prevent nosocomial infection among this patient? Okay, we promote, okay, the ICU care bundles. So what are these? So frequent hand washing, protective isolation of patients colonized or infected by drug-resistant organisms, full barrier precaution during catheter insertion, okay, chlorhexidine skin preparation whenever there is a procedure, and timely catheter removal. Okay, so we practice this bundle to prevent, okay, nosocomial infection from happening. Okay, so it's a common practice in the ICU. DVT, so deep venous thrombosis. So because of the predilection for immobility among these patients, bedridden sila eh, all patients should receive prophylaxis against DVT. So you can give a subcutaneous low-dose heparin injection or compression devices for the lower extremities. You can also give low molecular weight heparin, so enoxaparin, which are more effective than unfractionated heparin for DVT prophylaxis. Okay, you can also give fundaparinux, which is a selective factor 10A inhibitor. It is more effective than enoxaparin in high-risk orthopedic patients. So maraming choices na gamot for DVT. Stress ulcers. So common din among critically ill patients. So you can give histamine 2 antagonist or a proton pump inhibitor. Nutrition and glycemic control. So remember, it is also associated with respiratory failure, impaired wound healing, and dysfunctional immune response in critically ill patients. It is said that early enteral feeding is reasonable and preferred over parenteral nutrition. So whenever functioning ang gastrointestinal, okay, tract ng patient, you institute early enteral feeding. So when parenteral feeding is necessary to supplement enteral nutrition, delaying this intervention until day 8 in the ICU results in better recovery and fewer ICU-related complications. Okay. So ICU-acquired weakness. So this occurs frequently in patients who survive critical illness. So common, more than a week ang patient. So at the average of 2 weeks or more, right? So matagal yun na hindi naglalakad si patient or nasa bed lang, no? So hence they acquire weakness, particularly those with SIRS and or sepsis. Okay. And intensive insulin therapy may reduce polyneuropathy in critical illness. Anemia. So most ICU patients are anemic as a result of chronic inflammation. Also, repeated phlebotomy or blood extraction also contributes to ICU anemia. Okay, and red blood cell transfusion is associated with impairment of the immune function and increased risk of infection as well as ARDS and volume overload. Okay, another is acute renal failure. So the most common underlying etiology is acute tubular necrosis. Okay, this one is precipitated by hypoperfusion and or nephrotoxic agents. Since at any time sa isang patient na naka-intubate or critically ill, pwedeng mag-hypoperfusion. Okay? Or because of many medicines, no, which can be nephrotoxic. So pwedeng acute renal failure ang patient. Okay, so that's it for acute respiratory failure. Thank you.